Mr. Joseph Willits at the Council for Arab-British Understanding here in London. Welcome to our discussion.
Thank you very much.
Joseph, let's start from a recent article you wrote on the UK Independence Party and Islam. You say, quote, "To say that some views of UKIP candidates are merely Islamophobic is an injustice to the seriousness of some of the comments, which can only be termed as anti-Muslim hate." Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, I wrote a blog documenting the views of election candidates, local candidates from 2014, and many others from UKIP who have offered their anti-Muslim, anti-Islam views, and some of them are pretty frightening. I mean, there are some UKIP candidates that are standing across the country that call Islam a cult, that call for Muslims to be deported, mosques to be banned. Gerard Batten, for example, who is an MEP in London and is standing in Romford, said that Muslims should sign a charter, a declaration renouncing terrorism. And this kind of rhetoric is all over the place when it comes to UKIP, and UKIP keep playing the victim card at the moment, saying that, you know, we're tired of these racist slurs. Well, actually, you know, many people across the country are tired of this kind of rhetoric, particularly about Islam, and I think Muslims are seen as fair game by UKIP, and tired of hearing this kind of hatred, and it has to stop. I mean, there are plenty on a local level, on a more national level. There is a lot of rhetoric from UKIP, which is just awful at the moment.
Excuse me.
There's Mr. Spring here who would like to interject.
You say it has to stop. Why don't you tell that to the terrorists who are executing Christians on the beach in Libya, Coptic Christians? Why don't you say something to the fascist element of the ISIS movement, who are engaged in massive...
We are continually condemning ISIS.
Well, you haven't done today. You're condemning UKIP, who are simply making...
You've just made a link, sir, between Muslims and ISIS, and you know, in the same way that UKIP are doing, linking every action of Muslims to ISIS. I mean, in fairness, you know, most of the victims of ISIS are Muslims themselves. I mean, you know, may I put that question to you?
I'm afraid a large number of victims of ISIS are Arab Christians.
Yes, they are also Arab Muslims.
And Arab Muslims, I agree, but the Arab Christians are being extirpated purely and simply on account of their faith, not for any political reason.
You believe that UKIP have a right to attack and target Muslims?
No,
in this country, in this election. Do you believe that, judged on that, you think that Muslims are fair game?
No.
Rhetoric from
number one, I disagree with your statement that UKIP is targeting Muslims. It is not. What UKIP and other parties have attacked is an element in Islam.
Well,
the Takfiris.
I would like you, if you could read what I've the statements that I have put out on my blog, which is you know, it's available. I would be very happy to send it over to you, and you will see that this is not just targeting Muslims that are, you know, somehow targeting terrorism or radicals or anything like that. This is targeting a general population, and there are comments, endless comments, that target Muslims in general, call for banning of Islam, banning of mosques. Not just this link with ISIS, which you are somehow suggesting. It is across the board. And, you know, should all of our Muslim friends have to sign a charter renouncing terrorism? Are they responsible for that? I don't think they are.
I would disagree with you on that, on a number of points of what you've said, because I've lived in a country which was 100% ideologically Islamic, and Christians were not allowed even to live there. They were certainly not allowed to practice their faith, and this is a country that we are tied up with. Britain is tied up with.
You're talking about
Saudi Arabia. It's a one-party state with a complete intolerance of any minorities.
Mr. Willits, how important is the state of Palestine when it comes to the Muslim vote and on this occasion? And tell us a little bit about that.
Obviously, Palestine has always been a really important issue for the Muslim community. But it's not just, I mean, I think it would be unfair to say that this is just a purely Muslim issue. I mean, what we've seen is across the board now, there is an anger, I guess, at the injustice in Palestine. And there's also a huge desire from across the board from people of often all political persuasions to actually recognize Palestine.
But how does the Labour Party look nowadays when in October last year its leader, Mr. Miliband, demanded a whipped vote over recognizing Palestine as a state?
Well, in terms of Palestinian recognition, it wasn't a binding vote. But it was fantastic to see so many MPs, and also not just from the Labour Party, but voting in favour of the principle of recognition. And he has said, and I mean this has gone down well in many circles, and it hasn't necessarily in others. But he has said that we are going to look into the recognition of Palestine, and I hope that the Labour Party sticks to its word and says that we will recognise Palestine if he were to become Prime Minister.
By that very Labour Party, Mr. Willits, many MPs were embarrassed on that occasion, and perhaps, as you know, the style of Mr. Miliband to whip the vote was a little bit frowned upon at the time. So
it was a free vote. It was not whipped vote. It was a free vote for an entire House. It wasn't whipped, I don't think. And
he wanted it to be whipped.
I think really when we recall this event is an event that the British democracy should be absolutely not only aware of what's happening in the House of Commons, but to be proud of it. Because here we are, a Jewish man that suffered under his parents suffered under the Nazis, recognized the painful experience that the Gazian and the Palestinians are suffering from different attacks in different parts of Gaza and elsewhere in Palestine. And he stood up and declared his, not allegiance, but his political, actually he hanged his political future, because now he's become a pariah to a number of Jewish institutions in this country who are now do not want to see him as a prime minister of this country, and are working against him. That the man stood up and was counted as one of those people that want to see a peaceful Middle East through a two-state solution to Palestine and the right of Israel to exist.
Even though he may have upset, like you said, the Jewish community, which will have a say at the ballots.
I will tell you something. His uncle actually lives next door to me in Watford. And they were totally supporting him for what he's done. So this is a man that has suffered, and his family suffered from discrimination and suffered from horrendous pain that they had to go through to escape from Germany to come to this country. He has recognized that, he's doing something about it, and he should be commended for it.
Joseph Willits, you've been around refugee camps in the Middle East recently with delegations from Westminster. Do you think there is a possibility that Britain will be taking more refugees should Labour win or not in the coming year?
As an organisation, we think they're incredibly vital. Our delegations we do delegations to Palestine, to Jordan, to Lebanon, and I visited Jordan and Zatari camp in November, and I visited Lebanon in last month. The government's record, I think, in allowing resettling 143 refugees is shameful, and I think across the country, many Brits, including myself, are appalled by this record. The Labour Party has said, I hope that if it does come into power, that it will continue with this. It has said that it will join the UN resettlement scheme. This may, we're not talking about thousands and thousands of refugees coming to this country, but there should be more than 143. The government is, there will be more than 143 when it comes to the end of this, but the numbers are just too small.
How about there's 1 million out of 4 million Lebanese people? There's another 1 million from Syria. So on the scale of Britain, that would be 15 million coming here, and you only had 143, did you say? So,
1.3 million in Lebanon. There's 3.8 million more now that overall Syrian refugees overall. And I think, but what is really damaging at the moment is this really vicious climate, and you know, we've seen it. You know, the guest in interjecting before kind of embodies that a little bit. Is that this vicious climate when it comes to the dehumanization of people? You know, even the word migrant is a dehumanizing term. That refugees, and we keep treating people as if firstly they're idiots and that we should not do anything. And I mean, the lack of compassion in this country at the moment seems to be really tepid. And political parties, and UKIP are the biggest proponents of this kind of idea, that the lack of compassion, the encouraging lack of compassion, particularly when it comes to Muslim refugees. I mean, this idea from Nigel Farage that only let the Christians in. There was a UKIP candidate that said, send the Muslims to Saudi Arabia.
But that could have been influenced, perhaps, Joseph, by the sentiment in the Middle East. Perhaps that's some sympathy towards other minorities that are being oppressed, like Mr. Spring was saying, in the Middle East, which you just visited recently. Anyway, Joseph Willits at the Council for Arab-British Understanding, previously deputy editor at the political website Conservative Home. Many thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much. Seen as fair game by UKIP, and tired of hearing this kind of hatred, and it has to stop. I mean, there are plenty on a local level, on a more national level. There is a lot of rhetoric from UKIP, which is just awful at the moment.
There's Mr. Spring here. Joseph Willits at the Council for Arab-British Understanding here in London. Welcome to our discussion.
Thank you very much.
Joseph, let's start from a recent article you wrote on the UK Independence Party and Islam. You say, quote, to say that some views of UKIP candidates are merely Islamophobic is an injustice.
A declaration renouncing terrorism. And this kind of rhetoric is all over the place when it comes to UKIP, and UKIP keep playing the victim card at the moment, saying that, you know, we're tired of these racist slurs. Well, actually, you know, many people across the country are tired of this kind of rhetoric, particularly about Islam, and I think Muslims are
to the seriousness of some of the comments, which can only be termed as anti-Muslim hate. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, I wrote a blog documenting the views of election candidates, local candidates from 2014, and many others from UKIP who have offered their anti-Muslim, anti-Islam views, and some of them are pretty frightening. I mean, there are some UKIP candidates that are standing across the country that call Islam a cult, that call for Muslims to be deported, mosques to be banned. Gerard Batten, for example, who is an MEP in London and is standing in Romford, said that Muslims should sign a charter